title of the record. We actually just decided on it a few days ago, and we're well into the mixing process. It's called See the Light. There's a need to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's the inspiration where the title came from. It's being able to sort of go through the dark and see the light and kind of continuing on.
Bands can be complicated animals. Our band definitely is one. A lot of bands will have a primary songwriter that will write everything, produce everything, dictate everything. Some bands have 2 or 3 songwriters, and in our case, it's kind of like we have 5 cooks in the kitchen. It can get a little confusing sometimes.
The bridge should be like this, or maybe we should go to a different key. And so there's all these headbutts, especially when you have 5 guys in the band like our band that all have an opinion on something.
The last few releases that we've done, it's been more of a democratic process, and this record slightly has been a more organic democratic process.
And everybody has like their suggestions to put into the pot, and so it's definitely a little bit more of a creative process too, because you start to feed off of each other. The writing process is where you're like in the trenches and you're getting to the nitty-gritty of things, and stuff hasn't actually been laid down in stone yet, and so everybody has their say on how something should be. Or
you open up amongst the band to edit what you have, and be okay with the edit.
Vinny used to write all the lyrics. We used to say it was 99% of the lyrics, but now he still writes the majority of the lyrics or comes up with most of the ideas for the songs. But then every once in a while, we have to try and jam something into the melody that's already going on, and so there's certain spots that are a little tough, and then we're kind of brainstorming, and so everyone kind of has a little piece of that now.
And that's cool with me, and that's part of this sort of process of being in a band. It's not a solo project. It's not, us on our own and then coming together with our own songs, and that's the way some bands do it. Less Than Jake's a band, and we collectively decide on the vibe of the song and how things want to go, and that includes lyrics, and I'm cool with that.
The majority of the riffs, songs get brought in by Roger and I.
Buddy and I try our best to expound upon that, and it's a lot of fun. It's definitely a lot of headbanging against the wall, but in the end, we're usually really happy with how it comes out.
There's a lot of decisions to make at some point.
You'll write stuff, or I'll write stuff that I've had sitting around for 5 or 6, 7 years, almost a decade. There's a song on this record that there's a riff that I've had for probably close to 6 or 7 years that finally materialized into a song.
The song "Give Me Something to Believe In" was an old song that Buddy and I had written in 2006. I think it was around the time of In With the Out Crowd. And it just wasn't fitting with what we were doing, and Vinny said, "Gee, we always like that song," and he sent over these lyrics, and it was, the song wrote itself in about 10 minutes.
So the whole process is, it can take a lot of different forms. Other times I'll come in with a song that is pretty complete, and everyone kind of jumps on it.
I did write 2 new songs on this new record, and I'm pleased that everybody enjoyed them enough to want to do it. So when I write a song, I just kind of have an idea of a melody and a chord progression, and then I poorly record a demo of it and send it down, and then everybody tells me that they hate it.
95% of the lyrics that I have ever done sitting in a car driving up and down the streets of Gainesville, and that's how come. Partially, you have a lot of the imagery that you do about, streets and towns and things like that. This time around, I'm a new dad, so is Raj, by the way. It sets a different creative tone for me, because now I don't have hours to go back and forth up and down the same streets and up and down the interstate. I was stealing time away, you know, when my daughter would go to sleep. I would be up and kind of like in a separate room altogether. This record, you know, funny enough, was written between the hours, lyrically, most of it was written between the hours of 6 and 8 a.m., which by rock standards is when you should be going to sleep, not when you should be waking up.
The last couple records, the 2 EPs that we did, everybody would come in with a full demo, and we never really played together as a band. We kind of did it all a little more rushed. This time we took a lot more time.
We'd sit around in our warehouse and acoustic guitars out.
It's totally like letting the animal out for a second. You're like mad scientist and you're concentrating and you're trying to, you know, be smart and do good things.
You know, going over the lyrics with Vinny, and I think the last time we did it like that was on Anthem and the B is for B-Sides sessions when we did that.
The songs started coming together and there was definitely a vibe going on. And, you know, knowing that I was going to be recording this here at the Moat House and being the producer on the record, I really wanted to guide the writing, you know, into the direction that everything else was kind of going towards.
Buddy will usually take his iPhone now. It used to be like a little mini recorder back in the day, but now it's an iPhone, and we record them either just playing the basic song on the acoustic guitar, or sometimes it's full band.
Then JR and I, once we get songs to a certain point, come back to here in my little studio at my house.
And then that's what we put into, you know, the Pro Tools, as they say.
It's weird because you get to a point where, you know, the song's just basically like something like this.
What's good enough for them should be good enough for you.
And actually, at some point too, Roger started demoing these songs out in his studio. So it starts sounding like an actual song at some point. But now, due to technology, we have all this, and then we can come in and put our horn part over that next little A section that was going to be happening.
And then from there, it'll just like, you know, take on its own life.
And then everything kind of falls into place, and rhythm and timing finds itself.
It all comes out for the best. It's all small battles that end up with the whole thing sounding better than it would if you didn't go through all that otherwise.
We hadn't done it this way in a while, and I'm glad that we went back to doing it this way for this record, for sure.
So yeah, that's how we work.
As you can see, this is my model of my boat, the SS Sucket. It's a nice fishing vessel. You can see my fishing pole is on the back. And Chris DeMakes was chumming the back of the boat last night, so we should get some good catches today, I think. Like I said, we decided this was a great place to talk about the record because, you know, what's more reminiscent of a record than a seafood restaurant on the beach in North Carolina? I can't think of anything.
Hi, welcome to the Moat House. I'm Roger. This is my recording studio / man cave. We just recorded a record earlier this year. It's called See the Light, and it was recorded in this room. It was conceived here, you know. Like a lot of other kids, when I was 16, I had a 4-track and I stared at it for 10 hours a day, and I've always loved art of recording. When we were doing, I think, Hello Rock View, like I got my first Mackie, you know, and slowly started building the studio for a really long time. So about the time we were doing GNVFLA, I was, you know, highly involved with the recording on that. So then after that, we started doing a couple EPs with the TV EP, and we recorded those here at the Moat House, and the Season's Greetings EPs, and the Greetings and Salutations record that eventually became. So that was all recorded here at the Moat House, and I turned all the knobs and tuned all the guitars and figured out all the sounds and, you know, worked on all that music with the dudes in my band. And it's a crazy thing to have that luxury to just be like, oh, well, we have a month to make this record, so here we are.
We've kind of come full circle as a band. We started out doing our own thing, and then we worked with a number of people over the years, and we've kind of come full circle now. You know, the past probably 6 or 7 years, we've produced our own records. They've been self-produced, and it's just as big of a challenge this way as it is as working with somebody, in my opinion.
This record, we decided, you know, to take that organicness and apply it to how we did things in the studio, and that was refreshing. You know, it's whether, you know, I was just playing to a click by myself, which happened with no one else, to no click at all, and me, Raj, and Chris just playing together in his house.
I really like having the song figured out and knowing the tempos and knowing what arrangement's going to be and like kicking out that drum part and having the foundation like laid on there, you know? It's so final. Like once the drums are done, that makes it all worth it. It doesn't have to be perfect, you know, it's okay that there's a couple of pieces of feeling that are in there that maybe something's hit too hard or something's hit a little too late, but that kind of stuff is important.
Something happened, if it was you know, if I didn't stick something correctly, that was cool, man, you know, and if, you know, I added that extra, that hit in there, and sometimes those were the happy accidents that made it interesting and kind of different than what we've done before.
You know, a lot of times stuff is ad-libbed and it's just kind of off the cuff, and those types of things are you know, that spontaneity is what makes recordings cool and interesting. So it's a little nerve-wracking, but you know, I like the challenge.
And then sometimes the notes that you think are wrong or right, you know, it's subjective.
I think that's a cool thing actually, is like to kind of like have a bit of frantic energy in the studio to make it have like what it feels like live, you know, when you've had a couple beers and you're excited. That's what it should sound like on the record.
You know, after 21 years, I think that we are allowed to have that freedom to do.
That's kind of the stuff for me that's a little bit trickier about being in the studio versus being on the road. Because once you're on the road, like the part is the part, and then you either know or you don't, or you flub it or you don't.
You know, you'll have a song that maybe is 95% there, but you'll be in the studio and it's like the last day and you got to record that last vocal, and you're like, okay, well, what's the lyric here? And, you know, and we'll still be scrambling to write the lyric and figure it out, and you got to step in front of the mic.
Right, left, stop, wait.
When you're, you know, under the microscope of the microphone, I like to call it, you're in there, you're all alone in the room usually, or someone's sitting on the other side of the room, which is even more uncomfortable, and everyone else is in the control room, like listening to you intently. And so like every little note that you play and every nuance you play is like under the microscope. You're like on the slide, you're like a little bacteria getting inspected.
Sometimes to tap dance on your feet, you got to tap dance on your feet, you know, and you got to play notes that maybe you don't think are right, and sometimes you got to play them because everybody else has to hear them to know that they're not right.
In the studio, you know, you go in there to strive to be your best, to sound your best.
Because then you only get better if you push yourself. So we try to keep doing that.
For me, you know, before we go to record, you know, I like to sing. If we haven't been on the road or something, I like to sing for at least a couple days or a week to, you know, kind of have my voice up to snuff before I step in front of the mic.
I count on one hand what matters to me most. Only time can subtract them, I suppose. But I'm trying not to let it go. Still the numbers drop, it's just not adding up.
As for recording my vocals or editing my vocals, I can't do it. I have a terrible thing of hearing every little nuance and crack in my voice, and I'm one of those self-hating singers. So I typically go in there and you know, I'll do 3 or 4 or 5 takes, and then I tell the guys, hey, you put my vocal together, or pick what parts you think are good, because I have a hard time with it.
And who's to say, if I keep on crossing the line, that I won't sleep at all tonight and all?
You know, there's times when they'll be like, do it again, do it again, do it again, and you'll be like the 8th time trying to sing this thing, and you're just like, you know, physically, mentally, I can't sing it any differently, and you're kind of banging your head against the wall, and at that point, someone will have either a suggestion of try it this way, and you try it a little differently, and then everyone's arms will go up, and they're excited, or it'll be like, okay, go back to your old way, it's fine, and we'll move on. So,
Have you ever gotten asked on tour who the girl is that we got to sing all the high harmonies for the record?
Yep, the girl that sang all the high harmonies on the record is me. Don't think it's Roger, because it isn't. Because he'll say, oh, I can't sing that, JR, get in here. And I'll say, I can't sing that either. And then I'll try, and then he pinches my balls.
But then once we get into the studio, it's still not set in stone.
Playing and recording horns is definitely an experience all into itself.
So there's different nuances once it actually gets recorded for real. So you go in there and play with that, and that's tricky enough trying to just fit it into what the new tempo is, or like how the feel of the song has changed.
It's a lot of at the moment ideas, and it all happens as you're going. So you got to kind of be patient.
There's a lot of like decisions to make at some point.
you know, ultimately somebody has to wear that hat. Somebody has to be the guy that makes those decisions. And you know, personally, I wouldn't want to be that guy. There is a lot of tough times in the studio when you got a guy that is your bass player and one of your vocalists, and he's wearing that hat and he's being that guy, but then conversely he's also being the producer. And you know, it does get tense, it does get very opinionated, and it is tough.
It's a lot of knobs, a lot of little tiny decisions. It's a lot of being very meticulous with tuning and timing and selection and word choice and enunciation and all these tiny things to get every track to be, you know, as much as it can be.
Best friends that have come and gone, they left me.
I don't think there's anybody else in the band that could do it or would want to do it. So hats off to him for that. It's a lot of undertaking, and a lot of it's behind the scenes. When we leave the studio, it's the, you know, multiple hours of editing and compiling of tracks that he's doing. That's the tough part that I definitely wouldn't want to deal with. So hats off to Raj for producing.
Like, it's definitely like a lot of like different kind of hats going on, you know, like, for sure. And it's definitely fun. I'm not complaining. I kind of like being the control freak.
Give me something to believe in. I'm waiting on the reason. Not to keep on floating around.
Then it's all done, and then it's been a month, and it's been mixed, and it sounds rad. And then we go play a couple shows, you know, and we fly in somewhere, and there's a rented bass amp I've never seen, and, you know, turn it up, turn a couple knobs around, and sounds great. Let's rock.
I think that this time around with See the Light, it's the final combination where it's the balance of this like sort of buoyant music and super catchy, and with this like slightly heavier topics, but with a very positive message that goes along with it.
It's like living on a fault line. Yeah, and I'm too stubborn to decide. Living on a fault line. And I'm too stubborn to decide.
So I really don't recommend anybody doing any dental work before they go to sing. I recently had to do this first time in our 21-year career as a band that I've had to do that. I had a toothache so bad that my eyes were constantly watering, and I felt like someone was jamming an ice pick in my ear. So lo and behold, I went to the dentist to get this checked out, and make a long story short, they gave me a Novocaine block, which still, after 3 weeks later, my tongue is still numb. It hit the lingual nerve, and trying to sing with that was a little bit of a challenge. So if you hear a slight lisp or speech impediment on this record, don't hold it against me.
That's all I got to say. That's all I can say on that one.
From the storm.